I'm super happy to have Alex Coyle join us. This is wild that we have the chance to talk to you like this in this context. And Alex graduated with her BFA in photography from Virginia Commonwealth University, and that's actually where we met. We worked together there, and then we worked together in like some small production gigs after that. And then you went on to bigger and better things. And yeah, we've just sort of stayed in each other's orbits, and I've just constantly been impressed at where you've gone, not only in your professional work, like your sort of public professional work, but your personal artwork as well. And I also love that you still use a 4x5 camera.
Oh, thanks, Dana.
So, with that aside, I'm going to turn it over to Alex. And Alex, I don't like, is it fine if people jump in with questions on the way, or do you want to save it all till the end?
Totally. No, I love a little back and forth instead of me droning on. So bring it on, Caleb, Kiana,
Nice.
Wesley, and Noah.
Nice. Okay, cool. Yeah, and we'll just turn it over to you.
Cool. Well, hi guys. My name is Alex, as Dana said. I went to school in Virginia at VCU Arts. I got a degree in photography and film, also in creative advertising. And what I realized was I wanted to do kind of neither of those, but something in the middle of those. So, it takes trying a little bit of everything to figure it out. And now I work as a camera assistant in a union, Local 600, at part of IATSE, the International Alliance of Theater and Stage Employees. So that covers, go ahead, Dana.
I have a question already. You're probably
Yeah,
going to talk about this more, but are you going to round out what a camera assistant is and does?
sure. Yeah, let's do it. So I specifically work as second assistant camera. That's the person who's hitting the sticks like I am in that photo there, laying marks for actors, helping build the camera for its different modes, whether it's going on a crane or underwater or in a car or handheld. Um, and just kind of supporting the first assistant camera who is in charge of focus pulling and keeping everything sharp, because that is something we have not entirely automated yet in our society of automation. Um, but I've also done a lot of work as a camera loader, meaning the person who actually downloads the footage, whether digitally or in film stock, keeping track of it all, doing all the paperwork of the camera department, and being the glue between camera department and all the other departments on a film set. So that's kind of my background. And I'm also on my union sustainability committee, because the film industry is incredibly wasteful, tragically, and we need to make some changes because it's bad. So that's my little pitch. I won't go off too much on that. But if you care about the earth, want to see what we're doing, that's the Instagram that I run for us. Yeah.
Do, do you, before you move on, do you feel that like the sustainability push is met with resistance in the industry? Or do you feel, or like maybe the younger generation is excited about this? Like, yeah, when you
I
start
think
talking about this on set, are people like, yeah, let's do it? Or like, why are we doing this?
Yeah, it's really hard because everyone kind of wants to push the responsibility to someone else because it is hard. And the biggest offenders in the film industry are transportation and catering. The amount of food that gets thrown out every day that just doesn't get eaten is absurd. And then constantly having vans idling, just running through gasoline, to get people on runs or just to move things to and fro, to move crew around. It's really absurd. I don't remember what it ranks. There's not too many studies, but it is one of the worst polluting industries in general. Um, and yeah, so it's like who wants to really step in and take charge of that? And then it's also just kind of like a time thing, and time is money, and like a show wraps, and then it's like, oh, just get rid of everything. We want to wrap and stop paying people. And then all these resources, these sets, this lumber, this food just gets thrown in the trash. And so it's about creating a new mindset to budget for like an extra wrap day of like, we'll have a whole sustainability team, like send our set walls to a company to be reused, or like have someone bring catering leftovers at the end of the day to companies who distribute it to those who need food. And so it's just kind of planning and budgeting a little bit. Yeah. So end rant. So what did I do in college to do this? I did internships. I did one internship locally at a production house in town, in Virginia. And then I did one internship in California at an advertising agency. And they had a post house that I was a part of. And throughout college, I'd be like, oh, who's doing what in town? So I'd email people, be like, hey, can I like pick your brain and buy you some coffee? People are generally pretty nice when you get offered free coffee. So, but mostly it's just, surviving. College is tough. Um, and no one wants to be around frazzled people. So, yourself is priority. But, in the craziness of college, do what you can to kind of start reaching out and start seeing what resources are in your area. After college, I didn't go straight into the film industry. I did all kinds of odd jobs, just still kind of seeing where I could get my foot in the door. I worked as a machinist assistant. I did stuffing school portraits into flyers at Richmond Camera. I did school sports photography, and I actually got fired from that one. But
Wait,
um,
sorry, is there a story there?
just like the guy was a real jerk, and I was a little like, oh, I got this job day playing on this TV show, and he's like, oh, that means you can't work for me. And I'm like, yeah.
Oh,
So it was just like a priority thing. It was not my priority.
yeah, yeah, that's good.
Um, but it's fine. Nothing super dramatic. What other stuff? So yeah, my first time on set was in the props department actually, and they needed someone to no, I'll get to your question in a sec. They needed someone to assemble cameras because we had a scene where like someone was being let out of prison and all of like the news were there. So they needed someone to put together the news cameras for the extras. So they called me in. They're like, oh, do you know about cameras? I'm like, I do. So I put together like a couple hundred cameras, gave them to extras, told them how to hold them so they looked kind of legit. And while I was on set, I said hi to the camera department. And at the time, they were not happy with their camera PA. They ended up firing him and hiring me. So it just all snowballs.
What show was that? Can you tell us?
Yeah, that was Homeland season 7. So started in props, but I ended up in camera. And from there, I just kept snowballing. Life after college. I also did a grant through my college. My friends and I got a grant to do a project. Let's see if this will load. Cool. To make a little art exhibit about a decommissioned particle accelerator. There was a time when the US was the leader in particle physics. Let's see. Hey, there I am inside a particle accelerator tunnel. But then Switzerland came along and made CERN. And then all of a sudden the US was like, well, we don't need two massive particle accelerators. So they decommissioned it. So all of these scientists who had like uprooted their lives, moved across the globe to the US were suddenly like confronted with not having this accelerator to work with. And so now it's just a abandoned tunnel in Batavia, Illinois. And we kind of went there and interviewed the scientists and made a little art piece about it. And it went on to an art show in Virginia. So that was a post-college thing. Oh, gee,
And how did
there we
you
go.
how did you land that? Because that's incredible. Is
Oh,
that the arts grant that you applied for, or?
yeah, yeah, the VCO Arts Grant. And we were rejected the first time. We learned that doing a science project for an arts community, you really have to like explain it simply. And I've met the reciprocal thing, like getting an art grant for a science community is tough too. You got to find the right language to explain it to their interests. And so it's a little bit of a balance. But yeah. Um, just in the lines of like maybe when you're looking for jobs, you're like, oh, that would be cool, but blah, blah, blah. I saw a job and it was for like a year in Montana. And I was like, I don't know about a year, but I'll come out for like a few months. And it was actually another colleague from school who was out working at this art center. And I hit her up and I was like, hey, like, do you think you would need help just for like a little bit? And she's like, totally. So I interviewed and they're like, yeah, come on for as long as you want. So I ended up like working for as long as I wanted, which was just like not an entire year, but went out for a winter in Montana, editing stuff and shooting B-roll. So even if something doesn't totally look like something you'd want to do, like suss it out, apply anyway, talk to people. It's good practice.
That's wild that
Um,
there was the flexibility there, that
yeah.
they're like, oh yeah, sure, we can do it how you wanted to have it done. And wild that you like took it upon yourself to ask about that. You must have done that very tactfully to not instantly get rejected.
I think they was just they were so behind that they're like, yes, we need help now. So like I was the help now. Um, um,
Is that
and
this
then,
image here, the you in Montana?
yes, that is me trudging through the snow. And that like sculpture in the back, that's actually like handmade. It's cast from concrete. That's like they dug a hole in the earth and they poured a bunch of concrete in it and then they lifted it up. Um, so hold on. I'm trying to find where did my questions go? Crap. Maybe you can just read them out to me at the end, Dana. Uh, oh Lord. There we go. Cool. So yeah, after that, I had my first union job, and a lot of the crew was from Los Angeles, and I just kept in touch with them. I was fortunate that a lot of them were very great people to work with, and I actually wanted to like stay in touch with them, so I did. And after working another job, I was like, all right, saved up some money, gonna move across the country. So I did, and I let people know I was coming. And as soon as I did, I got more coffee. I talked to a bunch of people.
Um, I'll jump in with that question here because you can decide if this is the spot where you want to answer it or not. Noah
Yeah.
asks that he sees that you're part of the film union. Do they offer apprenticeships? And that may be the beginning of a how do I get into the film union question. But whether
Yeah.
you want
So
to talk about it
actually,
now or later, it's up to you.
I can do it now. Yeah. There is a I forget what it's called, but there is a program to like get in it. I think it's based in Georgia. Um, and then certain studios out here, I think Warner Brothers has one where you can kind of go through their program and they help get you onto set and start getting your days on union jobs because it is this really annoying catch 22 of like you have to be in the union to work on union jobs, but you need union days to get in the union. Or you need like a lot of non-union days to get in the union. I was super fortunate that at the time, Virginia was really strapped for crew when there was like 3 shows on town, which was like crazy for Virginia. And so I got a little bit of an expedite into the union, also with the notion of like, she's leaving, so she's not going to be taking our jobs after this show. So I was super lucky. And then the camera union is national, so I could transfer from Eastern region to Western region. But yes, there are avenues. Otherwise, you just want to start collecting days on non-union sets, keeping your call sheets, and there's a whole process, and it varies a bit depending on where you join. So yeah.
Thank you.
Um, yeah, LA. It's super expensive. Um, in Virginia, I had this like sweet apartment downtown, like a 50-foot private deck, granite countertops, it's super affordable. I could walk to the river. It was amazing. And then in LA, you have to like bring your own refrigerator. Like they don't come with the apartment. It's ridiculous. You're gonna have a lot of roommates. I toured places that was like a house that was like subdivided into 16 rooms, and then everyone pays for like a cleaning service for the common area, and there's like 3 fridges. It's just like totally bonkers. And parking is really absurd too. My apartment that I first moved into was tandem parking, so it's like you block each other in. So you always have to be coordinating like who's going and who's leaving. And with the film industry lifestyle, you don't always have a lot of heads up. And so that's really trying. Like I rented 2 of the 5 buildings bike lockers, and I was just breaking down my cart and my gear and shoving it all in these bike lockers and taking it out. And it's tiresome. um, But that being said, there is literally every kind of resource you could want in LA. I could ride the metro 2 stops to the American Society of Cinematographers Clubhouse and go to a lecture. So many museums, and it's just like where the film industry began. So there's like still traces of old Hollywood in the good and bad ways. But in the good ways, it's, people with a lot of knowledge from like how things are run and done efficiently. And that's really cool to be around and learn from. Um, there is climate change for sure. It's always a little unnerving to like, oh yeah, that was an earthquake, or you go out hiking and all the trees are like burnt down, and you're like, God, this is intense. We're in a drought. Well, actually, we have a lot of rain right now, which is great, and it's beautiful when it's green, but it's quite tragic when it's not, and the smog's pretty bad. Um, but that's Hollywood, so you slap in a sticker on it and calling it pretty. So um, it's been a great career move for me, but it does, it comes with its, faults.
Alex, if somebody wanted to get into the movies, is a physical move pretty much mandatory? Like you will go to Georgia or you will go to LA?
I think I was super fortunate that I really enjoyed getting my foot started in a small town, um, and making those connections in a small city, small market. Um, Having those connections allowed me to move and start working immediately. And I see so many people who move right away, and it's a really tough start. And it's really hard to get going, and you're just working these crap jobs because it's what you can get. And I am super privileged that I lucked out and got to skip a lot of that. And I owe it to working locally and maintaining connections with people from LA. But if you don't have that, it's going to be a tough path to forge. So really just kind of make as much of what you can now and set yourself up for success as much as you can. Because yeah, the main cities right now are LA, New York, and Atlanta. Chicago is technically the hub of the central region, but I think most of the work is in Atlanta right now. So I think that kind of answers. Um, Film industry lifestyle. There's no certainty. You never know. You could be working a job one day and then 4 hours later, they're like, oh, it's canceled. And depending on how late it's canceled, you might not get paid for that day. So bummer. The days are long, usually 10s or 12s, 12-hour days, plus travel. Gotta be quick at the phone. People will be like, hey, I need someone last minute. And if you don't answer your phone right away, they're moving down the list. Um, you do get to travel a bit. I've gotten to travel a bit, which is my favorite part. Last year I got to go to Morocco and Dominican Republic, and Mexico City for work. And like these are all experiences that I wouldn't have been afforded otherwise. And just travel in general opens so much up to your worldview. And it's really just really great thing to do. Um, because the days are so long, it can be really trying or really terrific with your coworkers and your partners. When it's good and when it's good, and when it's not, it's not. So knowing how to navigate difficult personalities or just long days and coming home to someone else and being like, I just need to fall asleep right now. And just kind of being a good communicator is really important, and setting boundaries, that kind of thing. There's definitely hustle culture going back to like when to move, where to move. Um, Definitely a crowd who's like constantly on social media, like, oh, check out this camera build I made, blah, blah, blah. Wheeling and dealing. And that's great. That's not me. But I just like need my social media to be whatever, my peace, my calm, not my work, as much as I enjoy it. But a lot of networking is done on social media. And also I find that the more I post on social media, the more people are like, oh yeah, she exists. Maybe we should have her on the next job. Um, and so it's this just reminder out there. And Like for example, I made a post on my Instagram a few weeks ago, and then another former professor of mine was like, "Hey, want to talk to my class?" And I'm like, "Sure." So it really is just a reminder that you exist, and shows people what you're doing. So it is important, as much as I can be a bit of a anachronist. No, a Luddite, that's the word. Someone who's like a little aggrieved with technology. Being able to manage stress when you're a mess is super important. My first big show in LA, I just totally was an anxious mess. Um, but I had to get through it. So I was going to therapy every weekend and acupuncture. And it was just like work, survival, back to work. And then that repeated and the show ended and I didn't get fired. And I did okay. Yes.
What show was that? And yeah, what was your role on it? That like, why specifically were you stressed? Like the environment of it, or just being like, this is my first time, I cannot mess it up.
Both. It was, a friend had recommended me for the job, and uh, it was as the camera loader for The Gray Man on Netflix, if you need a little action thriller. Um, and it was Netflix's largest movie to date, $250 million budget. At least that was recorded on the books. And it was just a huge show. And there was so much going on that I wasn't even doing the downloading. We had another loader do the downloading of the footage, and I was just managing the paperwork for all the people in the departments, their time cards, keeping track of gear coming in and out for main unit, for second unit, for the skydiving unit. It was just a lot of moving pieces and a lot of equipment. And I was like, oh my God, this is my first job in LA and I'm doing this. And like, it just, I let anxiety get the best of me. And I, was like visibly nervous on set and shaky. And then people didn't want to trust me holding things because I'm shaking and that's an expensive object. And it gets in your head and it gets in your head really quick. So just finding your friends where you can and just like remembering to take a breath. Like one of my things I've adapted from a meditation process is just like every time I pick up a case, whenever my hand hits a handle, I just want to breathe. And it's really hard to remember that, but it's so important. Um, so yeah, big learning lesson.
That's wild to land in LA and be like, all right, you're in charge of like all the gear on the Gray Man.
Yeah.
Don't lose anything.
Yeah. Pretty much. A couple thousand pieces of equipment and writing a carnet for it to go overseas and itemizing every bit. And yeah, it was a lot, but I'm here to tell the tale. Um, the industry is feast or famine. When it's busy, and when it's not, not. So you have to be savvy with your money. Um, because there will be famines like this year. The writer strike combined with the actor strike meant no work for basically the year. And you're like, oh, but the strike wasn't the whole year, but it affects it. So like last January, things didn't really pick up. Things kind of, film industry goes on holiday, like week of Christmas till New Year's. It's a nice holiday. And then things slowly start rolling back up again in like February, March. Um, but after last January, it just didn't pick up. They knew the strike was going to happen and they didn't want to start things they couldn't finish. So nothing really, not a lot picked up. Strike happens, strike ends, November? And then stuff has to be written. So now it has to be written, it has to be funded, crews have to be staffed, sets have to be built. There's a lot of moving things in pre-production that happen until I come in. So finding other outlets of income, finding other outlets of sanity. There will be strikes. And then also when I first moved to LA, there was COVID. So that was another year of like no production. So just being able to navigate alternative things to do is a valuable skill. I talked about a stressful production. Well, this was also stressful, but the movie Naiad, also on Netflix, is the movie that I'm most proud of working on so far. It was 3 months in the Dominican Republic. Um, it is about Diana Nyad, who is the first only person to have swum from Cuba to Florida, 113 miles. So if you need a feel-good woman about a woman kicking ass at 65, go watch Nyad. So,
Wait, she made
um,
the swim if she was 65 years old?
yeah,
Lordy, that's incredible. I'm gonna
I
watch
know.
Naya.
What have we done with our lives?
Seriously.
She's a very interesting character, and actually came to set too, and you're like, whoa, they cast her really well. But working in a different country was a really different like experience. You can see on the right, like there's tons of these buildings that are just unfinished in the DR. There's like this law that you get government funding if your building doesn't have a roof on it or something. So a lot of people just leave them unfinished to keep getting that funding, from my understanding. Um, and it's also very much a tourist driven space. So the coast is all about tourists, but then like outside of that, they're like, no, don't go there. That's tourists don't go there. And so it's this very strange dynamic. But the locals were the most kind people and really a tremendous help. And um, it was challenging because I, was working with this LA crew who at times really wanted the resources of LA, but were on this island. And to get anything there, it had to be like shipped to Miami and then go through this special port to get into the island. And it might not ever show up. Like it's not reliable. So we came with so much gear, a warehouse full, and we're mostly self-contained, but just working in the logistics and the mindset of like you have to be in your own bubble and don't expect exterior help. And if things go wrong, you need to find solutions. It was very trying, but it was also gave me a lot of thanks for the states because as much as it is easy to rag on the states and all the things, um, gosh, I just like really love having a hot shower at the end of the day that I know will be there and drinking tap water and not getting sick and eating salad without repercussion because the food isn't covered in, untreated water. And it makes you very grateful for the little things and the big things like OSHA and building codes. And you're like, wow, I'm glad at least there's like a way to file a complaint if like this building's falling down. But um, yeah. So interesting experience. Pretty cool movie. Naiad. Uh, cool things I wish I did in college. Apply to more stuff. I feel like in college you get this really amazing like student pass of like, oh, you're still young and a student. We want to help you out. And then you like leave college and then everyone's like, oh, you're just like an adult now. So like we don't care about you. So use your student discounts. Go out to events in the area. The sucky thing with LA is it just takes forever to get anywhere. So it's really easy to like stay in your little bubble because it's just traffic is horrendous. Open a high yield savings account. I don't know what that was in college, but I do now, and I put a little money in there, and it actually makes interest. So like my Bank of America makes like a penny a year, which is dumb. And then there's accounts that give you like 5% on your money, and that's where you want to put your money. Get that 5%. More things that I wish I did that I do now. Keeping track of expenses. It's good to have, so you have like W-2 jobs and you have 1099 jobs. And nowadays you can't write off stuff for W-2s anymore, which stinks. But you want to get as much money as you can. So like here's an example of last year's, just like me tracking things I'm paying for. My car, keep it running. My insurance. Da 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 da. Adobe Suite is so expensive, especially after you're a student. It's ridiculous. My phone, keeping my gear repaired, buying random, you know, lighter fluid cans for cleaning.
Bug zapper for cart.
Yeah. Um, Lunches of possible networking and coffee, I could have done more of that in 2023. Union dues, uh, education. That means going to the movie theater and it's educational. Stay for the credits, see who you know. And it's always fun to be like, oh, hey. And then you text your friend and like, oh, I saw you were loading on this and that. How was it? Um, Keeping yourself alive. Yeah, that's important. Keep track of those things. Write them off. Um, Keep track of your jobs. It's so easy to lose track of your jobs. And then it comes down to tax season and you're like, oh my God, like what do I do? Um, that being said, it's also easy to lose your identity. So um with every job, you get start work and they want like your passport and your social and all these things. So I try and keep my social to a minimum on my paperwork. I'll write on file if I've written it once. So it's not on 10 pages, it's on one. I had a payroll company have this data breach, and then my social was taken, and then I saw like my credit score tanked. I'm like, that's weird. And then I like look at the credit bureaus and it like turns out there's like an account with my name on it in collections. And someone had like opened up a Sprint account and racked up a couple grand and then
Oh,
went back to
wow.
me. And it's just like
Jeez.
such a pain to deal with. Um, so there's three credit bureaus, Experian, Equifax, TransUnion. Make an account with all of them, log in, make sure it's actually you on there. I had address in Chicago that wasn't me. I had phone numbers that weren't me. I had credit cards that I didn't open. And there's like all these other things that just like no bueno. Um, and then the dumb thing is in our capitalist society, where there's not automatically a freeze. So like go into those bureaus, put a freeze on your account, which means you have to unfreeze it in order to get credit. So otherwise, it's just defaults to being anyone can open credit in your name, which is ridiculous. And then all these companies like to charge money for like, oh, fraud prevention, blah, blah, blah. But like not every bank reports to every credit bureau. So it's just like their own little scheme to get money on their own dime. It's dumb. Just check your credit reports on your own and do it frequently. I thought I had it under control. And then like 2 months ago, I log in and there's another account in collections. And I'm like, what the bananas? So check them, be diligent. Because at the end of the day, it's like on you to deal with. No one wants to help you. And there's no avenue. If any of you know a lawyer for identity theft, let me know. I'd love to talk to one. um,
Yikes.
but that being said, I have a tax accountant. She's great. She works with people in the industry. I'm like, here's my 12 documents. Here's my write-offs. I worked in these countries, have at it. And that way, like someone else is like legally liable if something goes wrong. Because it's so easy for something to go wrong and then you're audited. And like I don't want to be audited and responsible. And that's just like my take. I also got a financial advisor who also worked in the industry. And now she helps me with portfolios and stuff like that. So just thinking ahead long term, money loses value sitting in a pile. Do something with it if you can. Yeah, okay. Personal practice. Um, I feel like in college you have all these ideas and dreams of like, oh man, I really want to, make magical realism the best genre ever, and like more people need to know about it, and I'm gonna write all these magical realist movies. And then you get out of college and you're like, God, I got bills to pay and stuff to got to do stuff to pay those bills. And it's really easy to get wrapped up in the work and lose sight of the dream. And for me, the dream changed. And there's like always like a little bit of a fight of like, am I just like a cop out? And no, the thing is like the dream changed and that's okay. And like I work as like a technical assistant for other people. My job is not creative. I'm around other creative people. I love what I do, but my job is not creative. But my job allows me to have the resources and the time to have my own creative practice. And I don't have any stress of like selling my art and photos for profit. And it's for me. And that's really valuable. And that's totally a valid thing to have. It's okay. Um, so I have a dark room. I shoot large format, as Dana mentioned. So if you don't know, if you see on this little picture here, so like 35, but you're like gonna shoot stills. Then there's medium format. Sometimes it's a square. That's even bigger. And there's large format, which starts at 4 by 5, where each negative is a sheet of film that's 4 by 5 inches. It's huge, super satisfying. Make huge prints with it. Um, and for me, like after college, I think I didn't take photos for fun for like a year. I had this existential crisis of like too many photos in the world. We don't need more images. I'm done with cameras. They can all go in a bucket and be burned. And then I like gravitated back towards 4 by 5. And it's like so slow and it's so cumbersome. And it's a lot of stuff to carry around. And it's totally absurd. But that's what I love about it, is that in this incredibly fast-paced Instagram culture we have of like me carrying, my 20-pound backpack and like climbing a mountain with it and making maybe 2 images and coming home, developing them. Maybe I'll scan them. Maybe a year later I'll print my phone. And like there's just something so much more rewarding. And it really gives me a sense of space and really makes me present in the environments I'm in and really helps foster my relationship with what's around me versus just clicking away. So that's why I choose 4 by 5.
Do you
Um,
have a larger image of the camera just in case someone hasn't seen it?
no, but I can Google one.
Oh
Um,
gosh, sorry. And just curious, anyone that's on right now, has anyone worked with film before? I know our class is obviously digital. Has anyone shot film before?
I've always wanted to get like a Leica M6, but
Nice.
yeah, so
and
this
a
is
Rolleiflex. I've always wanted to try to use a Rolleiflex.
The little like the twin lens look down.
yeah.
Absolutely. Been able to have had the privilege of using it.
Yeah. Oh, Amira says that you have. Excellent. All right, so this is your camera, Alex?
Yeah. So it like folds up. It's like more portable as far as 4 by 5 cameras go. It collapses. And then yeah, it takes amazing photos. Um, so like darkroom practice. There on the left is apartment living, darkroom in the bathroom. And on the right is my big girl darkroom. And so I now rent a guest house and have a dark room and art studio there, which has been really lovely. Kind of going back to the roommates in LA thing. My partner and I live with his grandparents. And I feel like you see like a lot of that in LA, people living with their family because it's just so expensive. And so I'm super lucky, like we help the grandparents out, they help us. And then that allows me some income to spend on like my own studio space. So built a sink, it's the enlarger to the left, and the other side of the studio is like scanning and repair and materials. And it's so lovely to process film and then not have to move it to shower. So, but you do what you got to do.
Yeah, that the bathroom shot is pretty legit. I was going to jump in for 2 seconds because Amira
Yeah.
pointed out that yeah, Western has a darkroom class. Um, its entry level comes right after my class. I don't think you have to take my class to get into that one. And yeah, Western darkroom is awesome. It is one of my favorite darkrooms. It's huge, tons of enlargers, huge sinks. They have the enlarger heads that can pivot. So instead of shooting down onto an easel, they shoot onto the wall. So you
Oh
can
my
make
God.
huge prints or, take multiple sheets of paper. Anyways, I will go on and on about the darkroom classes at Western. So thank you, Amira, for reminding me.
Yeah, go do that. Go project onto a wall, onto like a massive print while you can in college. Oh my gosh, that'd be rad. Yeah. So like here's just a few 4 by 5 shots. A little crazy flare happening here. But I just like love the amount of detail that comes from 4 by 5. And like you can really, I don't know if I can in Google Drive. No, I can't really zoom in. But like you can super zoom in and like I think also with 4 by 5, it just like gives you such a sense of perspective, especially like I mostly do landscapes that just kind of like we're humans and we think we're like all that and we have all these solutions to things. And then you go out in the real world and it's like, oh, the highway's closed for the winter because of the snow. Or like, like we're just so little beings in the grand scheme of nature. And we're just this little hut in a field and like this little truck meandering around this dirt road. That's all we are. Yeah. There's also amazing landscape out in the western part of the country, as you guys know, in Washington. Um, Also been getting into falconry, and so I've been photographing my falconer friends. It's like a little new portrait series. So it's a little portrait series so far. Um, yeah. Question.
Every time I talk to you, you get more and more badass. Oh, I was photographing inside a decommissioned particle accelerator. Oh, I was living in Minnesota in the winter. Oh, I'm doing falconry. Um, yeah, does anyone have any questions for Alex? I've got a few also, Alex, like, well, let's see if anyone has any specific questions and then I'll jump in.
I had two.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask what made you like that camera so much for the first one.
I always wanted a 4x5 view camera because I wanted to shoot large format. And so it goes beyond 4x5. You can shoot 11 by 14. It's freaking like each negative is this big. It's insane. But 4x5 was like kind of like the threshold of like still like kind of affordable, but like massive in image quality. View camera I wanted because it was collapsible, and I was like, I want to hike, I want to be on rope with this camera, I want to take it to places the old geezers say is impossible. Um, and then I saw this one on Etsy, and I was like, that's kind of cool. And it like said like untested, looks cool, looks good. I'm like, okay, I'll gamble on it. And then I get it, and it turns out this camera was owned by a crime scene photographer. He invented a fingerprinting device. He was the father of blood splatter analysis. I'm like, no, this was in the Etsy listing. Like, this is insane. Like this camera has seen some stuff. But now it's seeing like much more lovely things.
That
Yeah.
is awesome. And one last question, real quick. And I was curious. Sometimes photography and with the things like Instagram, it can seem like it's a little bit oversaturated. I wanted to get your professional opinion on what's one thing you think we can do to kind of set ourselves apart.
Oh, what a fantastic question. Um, I think really it's more adding text to your images in the sense of starting conversations like about your work and talking about why are you taking photos of what you're taking photos of, and maybe insight into your process, and kind of helping bridge the gap with people who are scrolling, and maybe just adding some insight into like why are you taking these photos, what do they mean to you, and I think the why will set you apart from people who are just posting and they're like, oh, flower. Okay, what about this flower? Tell me about it. Yeah.
I feel like you have talked about how networking is obviously like vital to you getting work, and that some people, and you included, like have been able to network through like say your Instagram platform, but you also like a lot of those relationships like started in real life, right? And then they get sort of fostered through networking. So I would like it's all about building relationships. So to me that makes like what you said, like the why of your images connecting, like starting to build a relationship with the viewer instead of just like a one-way conversation with the viewer.
Yeah. Like if you're just dropping hashtags all the time, like maybe the algorithms will pick it up and it'll get, viral, maybe. But like there's got to be some substance with it. That being said, I have seen, like people create relationships over Instagram with people they didn't know in real life and then go on to work with them. So that is an avenue too. I think it's maybe a little less common, but it's really just about how much you hustle that way. So,
When I'm gonna jump in with another question. Um, I see, and I don't know if this is just like happens to be the accounts I subscribe to, but I see a lot of dudes showing off their camera builds, and it feels very phallic. Look at how big my camera is. How is it like? Is it still like a man's game? Is it changing? Like,
totally.
I can imagine you as like the first job you have, you're like in charge of every shred of gear on Gray Man, and that's just blowing my socks off. Like nothing is cheap. and it's all going
No.
through you. So, anyways, yeah, how's that been? Have you had to navigate that? I'll let you talk.
Yeah. Um, there's definitely like bro camera culture and it's totally absurd. Like I've seen people like with their Ronin build and they're like at the gym with their Ronin camera build, like doing bicep curls. I'm like, dude, like get out of there. No one wants to see you recording yourself at the gym. Um, and I'm very often the only woman in camera department. I think for me, I grew up with a brother, so I'm like kind of used to being the lone lady. And things are times are changing, but there's definitely still lingering um attitudes on set. And I've definitely had some uncomfortable experiences. And so it's being able to speak up for yourself, which is really, really hard. And if you can't in the moment, like talking it over with your supervisor, like I had an instance, and where like a head of department was like writing me these weird notes, and it was like borderline like eccentric personality, but also like odd and not really appropriate. And so I talked to my supervisor about it, and she's like, like I'll help you talk to him if you need. But yeah, like um, if you want to have these like weird little note conversations, like that's go for it. But like if you're uncomfortable with it, like it that's okay to be uncomfortable. Like your feelings are valid. And so just being able to stick up for yourself and then talk to the person or like escalate it further if needed. Um, the major studios have safety hotlines. There's anonymous ways to report things. Um, being able just to like foster a trust within your own department. Um, sticking up for each other, that kind of thing. And I'd say really fortunately, the biggest thing to overcome kind of today is just people looking at you and being like, oh, do you need help carrying that? And you're like, oh my God, like it's fine. It's like a 5 pound sandbag. Like I got this. And they're like, oh, I just want to help. And it's like, there's always a balance because like at the end of the day, we do have a job to do. And like many hands make light work, but when it becomes like over like enthusiastic to help the lady on set, it's like kind of annoying. um so it's like this weird balance of like showing like no, I'm capable of doing my job, but also like there are times when I like, yeah, I can't push this 200-pound cart uphill if it doesn't have an assist motor on it. And so I'm like, hey, you get here, spot me, like help me up this hill. And people will help. So yeah, I think that's the worst of it for in my experience, thankfully. But definitely like the stories I've heard from older women on set and like the things they encountered in the industry are like really horrific and disgusting. And I think the majority of people realize that old Hollywood should stay in the past and that you know, if people are being gross, you report them. And so yeah, that's my 2 cents.
Nice. Yeah. Um, let me see how we're doing on time here. We're good. Um, I don't know, surprise you with this or whatever. I was hoping to get like maybe your worst or most embarrassing onset story, and then maybe one of
Mm,
your favorite like onset stories. I know it's like dropping that on you last
yeah,
minute, but
most embarrassing. Okay, so Homeland season 7, my first union show. I was camera PA. Um,
and
there,
what does camera PA do? Just real quick.
so camera PA is not a union position. It was just like I'm a PA assigned to the camera department. I'm basically their little coffee guru and get them all their snacks and keep them happy and help them not touching the camera gear because that's a union position. And but learning by tangent. So um yeah, getting people snacks. DP over walkie says, hey, can you give me an ice cream sandwich? I laugh like, yeah, sure, coffee. It's January. Like, yeah, right, you want an ice cream sandwich. And I like laugh it off over walkie, and then I walk away and I'm like, wait, was he serious though? Like, does he really want an ice cream sandwich? So I'm like, oh my God, what if he actually does want an ice cream sandwich? And so I like go to the crafty trailer. I'm like, Jane, Dave says he wants an ice cream sandwich. And she was like, give that walkie to me. She goes on to channel 6, which is the camera channel, and she's like, you leave this poor camera PA alone. Get an ice cream sandwich. Um, so I almost passed it off as if I knew the joke was coming, and then like anxiety got the best of me, and then I made myself a fool. So little things like that. Um, another moment also on that show. So sides are the part of the script that you're shooting for the day. So every day you get a printout, or now it's mainly digital, of like the 6 or so pages that you're shooting. And you pass them out to everyone in the department who needs them. Mostly the focus pullers, so they can know like the dialogue that's going on while they're like keeping the speaking person in focus. And but also called sides are the sides of a tent that you have like a 10 by 10 pop-up tent. And so my first assistant asked for some sides, and I brought her the side of a tent instead of the dialogue, the obvious thing of the script that she wanted. And she just stares at me and is laughing. So yeah.
That's really good.
Yeah. Well, what did you say? Embarrassing and what else?
No, that was good. That was good. And then maybe that's like your favorite moment so far where you're like, wow, this is my life right now.
Gosh. Um, I think recently in Morocco, we were doing the VFX plate unit for um the new Godzilla, not the one that just came out, but there's gonna be another one, Godzilla and Kong. They're friends now, I think.
Friends now, I think.
Not versus. But we were in Morocco. And mind you, like I had like a month prior to the job, I like switched my Duolingo to Arabic. I'm like, I gotta learn like a few basic things. And then I get there and I learn that it was formerly a French colony and everyone speaks classical French. And I'm like, God, I could have been practicing my high school French. Like, um, but so we're in Marrakesh in the marketplace, and we get there super early before everything fills up. But then um it's the World Cup and Morocco's in the semifinals. So we wrap the day early to kind of get out of the chaos. But even so, it's still packed and people are bustling. And it really is like the movies do portray Marrakesh quite well. And it's like, there's snake charmers at the front, and there's people like with baskets of like things and trinkets and rugs and sinks and all strapped together and, meandering around. And while this is all going on, we have to wrap our set, and we have these huge camera carts with all this stuff on it. And I'm just like pushing it through the heart of Marrakesh, like yelling in French, like coming through, like attention, like cart coming through. And just like people are like parting the sea and like, who is this chick coming through with all these things? And it was just so surreal to like just be bustling through Marrakesh. And then so we wrap, my friend and I decide to stay and kind of meander through the markets. And everyone, like when Morocco scored a goal in the World Cup, you didn't have to be watching the TV to know. Like the whole marketplace would just erupt, and everyone's screaming and cheering, and you're like, oh my gosh, they got a goal. And you're walking through, and there's like all these people crammed into like a little barber shop watching the little TV, and there's just like, I don't know, it was so surreal and just really incredible. So, Morocco.
That is wild. Amir has been dropping some comments. And Amir, did you have a question?
Just a comment. That's amazing that you were there when they scored, because I was there when they played Portugal.
Oh,
And
cool.
yeah, and they scored, and I was just like, the whole, like, I've never seen like the amount of people that were there. Like, there was not a single empty space on the street. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know if that was the same feeling when you're in Marrakesh, but it was like you could feel it. Like you can hear the screams from people's like windows and houses. So
Yeah.
that's an amazing experience for me too.
Oh my gosh, what a coincidence. Yeah, like we wrapped early and production was like, well, how long are you going to be? And I'm like, I don't know, an hour. And they're like, we'll wait for you. And I'm like, no, 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 I can't have like the production like on the dime waiting to drive Alex Coyle home from her Marrakesh shopping trip. Like I'm like, it's fine, I'll take a taxi. And they're like, no, 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 are you sure? And I'm like, yeah, like what does the match start? And they're like, oh, 6 or whatever. I'm like, okay, we'll be gone before then. And they go, okay, if you're sure. And I'm like, yeah, for sure. And we got home finding a taxi, but it was just such a cool experience.
Anyone else? Last minute questions for Alex? I know we've sort of been like all over the place, but that's kind of you. You were like so incredibly awesomely all over the place.
Thanks. You gotta diversify,
Cool. I think that's fine. Thank you so much, Alex, for your time and for. I feel like we went through the part where you're like, yeah, I went from school to Hollywood kind of quickly, but it sort of makes sense. Like the first job was with props. You knew about cameras, and you somehow that jump to the camera department is pretty amazing. You just said hi to them.
Well, I mean, like I knew the first assistant. So yeah, I went over and I was like, hey, it's me. If you need a camera PA ever. And they were like, well, in fact, we might prefer you over our current one. So
So your
um
huge break is due to someone's incompetence.
I feel like honestly, a lot of my success has been putting out fires, like someone needs something last minute, or like, oh, loader got sick, or like, oh, we need someone to do the second unit real quick, or like, oh, can you come do blah blah blah? And like you say yes, and you put out the fire, and then you get ready to put out the next one. So yeah.
That's awesome. Cool. Well, thanks everyone for being on for this, and yeah, thanks again. We'll give a round of applause for Alex, everybody. I'm clapping.
Thanks for coming. I know you didn't have to now, but we appreciate it. Love some communication.
Yeah. Cool. Take care, everyone. If I haven't graded your most recent assignment yet, it will be probably tomorrow. So cool. Thank you again,
Thanks for
Alex.
coming in.
Thanks. Thanks, Dana.
Yep. See ya. See ya.
Bye.